People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
I think if I had told my 10-year-old self that 30 years later I'd be making a movie about Pat, I wouldn't have believed it.
That's really good.
But well, here I am, surrounded by Pats.
And action.
My obsession with Pat began in the early 90s on SNL.
I'm Pat!
Pat was nerdy, chunky, wore a Western shirt, and was indecipherable as a man or a woman.
Pat, did you hear about our Halloween party?
Oh, yeah. The guys are bringing liquor, and the women will be bringing hors d'oeuvres. So you'll be bringing...
Pepto-Bismol!
And everyone was always trying to find out Pat's gender. That was the sketch. The whole sketch. And it lasted for over 4 years on Saturday Night Live and through one major motion picture, a draft of which was even written by Quentin Tarantino. My middle school friend and I used to watch It's Pat the movie over and over and over again. It was hilarious.
I love to stroke your pussy, cat.
I know. Muffy likes it too.
When the film flopped, Pat was left to rot in the annals of history. But not for me. Pat lingered, somewhere in the back of my mind, dormant until 20 years and a gender journey later, when I was out one night with friends. I went home and rewatched It's Pat the movie. I still laughed my ass off. But this time, I saw something totally different. I saw me.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I'm talking with Ro Haber. They are the director of the 2025 documentary, We Are Pat. Do you remember Pat? Remember that character from SNL? Kind of questionable. Remember the movie with the screenplay pass by Quentin Tarantino? Yeah, we're talking about that. And we're talking about Ro's amazing documentary. And yeah, had a great time with this film. Had a great time talking with Ro. And I hope you enjoy this interview. Can you tell me kind of how you got your start?
I went to NYU for film school quite some time ago. And immediately after film school, I just started making documentaries because it was sort of like an easy way, like barrier of entry kind of. It's not easy, but it was, you can just get started. You can grab a camera, you can go make a film. So I met a very good friend of mine, Lauren Chaffee, who is now a big doc producer. And we made our first series called New Deep South, which is about queer life in Mississippi. And that was kind of like really how I got started in the doc space. So pretty traditional beginning, but then have continued to do documentary and narrative work and commercial work since then.
When it comes to the documentaries, how do you choose your subjects, or do your subjects choose you?
They definitely choose me. Pat was not something that I had on my mind to make a film about, but in order to make a good doc, you kind of have to have it's like having like a thesis statement in an essay. You just have to have sort of like a sticky question that you feel like you can actually unpack and explore like in a meaningful way. And I felt like Pat was a really good entry point into a lot of larger questions, like sort of philosophical questions about art, about how art ages, about gender, about like historical context. So it felt like it'd be a lot there.
You remember that moment when you said to yourself, okay, I do need to make this documentary? There was enough to kind of tip those scales for you?
I was at a dinner. I think in the film, I don't say it quite as specifically, but I was at a Sundance dinner. I was at this like funny steakhouse in Burbank. and we're all joking about 90s movies that should never be remade. And suddenly, like, Pat popped into my mind, and I was like, I want to remake It's Pat. So then I went home and rewatched It's Pat the movie with like my middle school best friend who I had originally watched Pat with. And honestly think it was in the rewatching of It's Pat the movie that I felt, yeah, like that a documentary has to be made on this, because It's Pat the movie is so, it's kind of like so screwball and so wild and so good in certain ways that I just felt like Julia was so prescient about these conversations about gender that we were going to be having. It's just that she didn't really know that that's what she was getting at. So I kind of felt like, yeah, like when you find a piece of art in a way that is weirdly ahead of its time, despite being kind of also behind in certain ways. Like it's a unique piece, and I felt in that moment that there was a lot to explore.
Can you tell me a little bit about your process as far as deciding who you're going to talk to, or making a list maybe of who you want to talk to, and just like setting up the logistics of this? Because it seems like this was a massive project.
I knew that I wanted to talk to Julia, so she was sort of number one, but early on, I also knew that I wanted to speak with sort of cultural figures and comics. So I started with people that I knew. Joey Soloway was a sort of early interview because I knew Joey. James Tom was early on my list because I've known James for a long time. I pre-interviewed Lyndon Crawford, who is not in the film so much, but was like a really formative in the way that I thought about the film. So I just kind of at first reached out to people that I was familiar with. And then honestly, with the comics, it was really fun because how I found them was that I just went to a whole bunch of comedy shows. So I was in New York, and like there's a show called T for T, which is just a trans comedy show. And I went there and was like, kind of was scouting who I thought was funny. And after that, those were the comics that I hit up to discuss the film.
How did you approach Julia Sweeney yourself?
I reached out, like I think I just sent her like a cold email because I think on her website there was like a contact me thing. So, and then the second she didn't get back to me, and then I knew someone who was like in the same book club as she was. So I was like, oh, I was like, I'll go through the book club, but that person wasn't really comfortable like approaching her. So then we just sort of went the traditional route and went through her reps, and then that's how she responded.
Feels like this is a real kind of reckoning for her as well. Just like, how this character I created, how do they play now? How was it conceived? Just even some of that was like a reaction to all the boys have characters, but I don't have a character.
Julia and I like to joke that this was like the most expensive couple years of therapy that's ever existed, so for both of us, because I think for her, it was sort of like unpacking this character that has kind of come to represent her legacy, at least in the comedy space. And for me, it was just about, yeah, like a childhood obsession that sort of became indicative of a lot of other things that I was thinking about in my life.
Did your opinions and perceptions change as you were making this?
I think one of the big takeaways in the film that I think is so meaningful was just kind of like, how Julia was influenced to make Pat because of the way that the sort of gendered pressure that she experienced from her mom. And that was definitely a piece of information that I didn't go in expecting that, I definitely went in expecting like, oh, we get all this fun Pat lore, but the fact that Pat, in a way, like, the fixation with gender around Pat, I think also came from like a gendered oppression that she was facing. And then the whole thing about like the SNL writers' room being so male dominated, and kind of her just trying to like get this character on that weirdly like couldn't even be female because that wasn't even going to work in that space. So I think those were definitely some interesting tidbits of information that I wasn't expecting when I came in. But in terms of my affinity for Pat didn't really change. Maybe it grew, kind of came in like having an affinity for Pat and came out with like a more nuanced perspective on Pat, but still loving Pat.
I have to admit that I was never a big Pat fan when I was watching the show, just because of the drooling and the hand thing just creeped me the fuck out.
Yeah.
It wasn't the gender. And obviously I'm not nearly as enlightened as, I'm more enlightened now than I was all those years ago when I was watching it, but it was just the hand thing. And I'm so glad that you actually addressed that in the film.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I actually wish we had time to go into more. And that's, if I had more time, I would have loved to, because I think, yeah, like, I think, look, the 90s were a different time. We were not talking about neurodivergence and disability in the same way, which is, I'm not saying that we've become very enlightened on it now, but I think we have more language around that. So I think, Pat is not only like sort of Pat in a way was like Julia just trying to do weird, right? And what does weird mean? Weird means like gender nonconforming. Weird means neurodivergent. Weird means, you know, like being chunky. Weird means, like all of these different things. So I think she just sort of put together these ideas of what undesirable meant. And so a piece of that was this like neurodivergent piece, and we also talk about sizeism, in the film. It's like, so I think she was just sort of playing in those waters, and that's not to excuse her, but I do think that, like, I don't know, like when I look back on all the sketches that were on SNL at the time, they were all really offensive, pretty much all of them. Like, I had to, like, NBC has taken down a lot of the original Pat sketches, probably because they were offensive. So I had to go on the Wayback Machine to like pull the full episodes of SNL, down from the internet. And as I was like looking for just the Pat sketches, I would watch the other sketches. And so there was a sketch that came before the Pat sketches that literally was called Stock Talk. And it was like male stalkers like exchanging tips about how to stalk women, and I was like, this is so much more offensive than the Pat sketches, you know what I mean? And we're not even talking about race. Like, I mean, it's just like they're all offensive. So it's like it was important for me to unlock, to discuss like the pieces of Pat that made Pat problematic. And I think, like I said, I feel like we could have gone into that even more. But yes, it's definitely like the neurodivergent piece is like a big part of Pat that I think we would reconsider if we were making Pat now.
I see you in the documentary a lot. I mean, not just as a talking head, but like participating with group discussions and stuff. Can you tell me about your crew? Like, how many people are there shooting and recording all this?
I don't know how many people. I think it definitely varied. Like, we had a smaller crew for sort of just the interview parts. And then a larger crew, obviously, for the recreations, because we had to like make the sets, and that was like a sort of bigger couple days on the stage. But generally, I would say, I don't know, maybe like a 12-person crew or something, like for interviews and stuff. Still a bit of a crew because we have to set up the backdrops and light it and all that. But we had such a great crew, and we tried to get, I think naturally I just tend to work with like a lot of like queer people and people of color and women, and I always hire female DPs, and that was no different like for this set, and it was a really special set.
How long did it take you to actually put this together?
The entire process, sort of from ideation to like premiering, was about 5 years.
Wow.
And the reason that it sort of took that long, really, I think, A, because I started it during the pandemic, so that was kind of like a rough time for production anyway, but B, it was really the financing. Like, financing was what takes the longest to put together, I think, or at least it did for us. So the filming was not, that didn't take like a particularly long time, because we were, it was like a lot of interviews, and then there was some verite, but mostly, and a lot of archival. So it's really, the filming, I think, probably was over like 2 years maybe or something. And the edit, of course, took like about a year. So,
well, what were you able to accomplish during the pandemic?
we shot the initial sizzle during the pandemic. So we shot sort of like a sizzle reel that we used to then go get funding. We shot a lot of the initial interviews. We shot some of the people dressing up as Pat and like running around stuff, like the beach, people dressing up as Pat and running around the beach, running through the streets of LA, which is actually really funny because when we recently like dropped our trailer, someone commented in the comment section. They were like, a couple years ago, I saw like a whole bunch of Pats running around the streets. And I was like, yeah, that was us. That was definitely us. Like, it was not anyone else. So, we did kind of quite a bit during the pandemic. But then we went into sort of like principal photography more like, past the pandemic.
And obviously, so much work on documentaries is done during that post process, during that editing phase. Can you tell me a little bit about how that was and who you worked with for that?
Yeah, definitely. So I was really lucky to work with like two incredible editors. Our main editor is Hannah Buck, who she does a lot of pop culture docs. She works with Penny Lane, who is another documentary director who does comedy. She did like Hail Satan, and she's very funny. So Hannah is kind of like a structure queen. She's very, very good at structure, which was important for this because we're putting together a lot of elements. Hannah is based in Australia, so we would work remotely, which was, interesting in itself. With her, we really worked on dialing in kind of the form of the film and how we were going to put together the elements of like, interviews, writer's room, the sketches, archival, there was just a lot to put together. And then our finishing editor was Alex Bose, who is based in LA, and he's just so wonderful, has so much heart, has like an amazing aesthetic eye. And so with him, we did a little bit of restructuring, and then we also really dialed in, I would say, the aesthetics with him. So they were both amazing.
Did you work with folks to get feedback on things and kind of help shape it that last little bit?
Yeah, we did do a couple feedback screenings with some like trusted friends, and that was really helpful because originally, like in one of the earlier screenings, we had the full sketches in, and we just felt like it was running too long based on the feedback that we got. So then we cut them up. So it's yeah, we definitely took feedback into consideration.
I was also curious about you yourself as you're going through this whole process. Like, what were some of the more surprising things that you found while you're doing your research and putting this together?
One funny bit of trivia that I think is like interesting is that in It's Pat the Movie, like the band that plays is Ween, which is, a band that I really liked when I was a kid. That's actually how I found Pat, was that I really was obsessed with Ween. And then so I saw It's Pat the Movie because it was like Ween is in this movie. And then I became obsessed with Pat. But the band that was originally supposed to play was Nirvana.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and because Julia had met Nirvana because Kurt Cobain actually loved Pat, which is kind of crazy. Like Julia met Kurt Cobain and Nirvana like on SNL because they were playing they were the musical act in one of the shows. So they were supposed to be in It's Pat the Movie, and then I think they like had to tour or something happened, so then they got Ween instead, which I thought was like a really funny piece of trivia. So definitely found that out. Yeah, I would say that's like a funny piece of trivia. Also, there's like a really funny interview with Quentin Tarantino and up like this 1993 Playboy about Pat that I thought was like a very funny like piece of ephemera that I thought that I really enjoyed finding. So yeah.
And it's so fascinating to me that you found Pat through the movie rather than television, because I think you're probably younger than I am. So I was watching those SNLs while they were playing. How old were you when you saw It's Pat the Movie for the first time?
I think I was maybe like 12. So yeah,
Wow.
I wasn't watching sketches in real time. I was watching the movie really was what I found, and maybe that's even why I liked Pat so much, was that I think Pat in the movie has a like more of a character arc, So really I became obsessed with the film, and then I didn't see the sketches until later.
It's amazing to me because I remember, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 of the sketches. I
Yeah.
remember, I think Dana Carvey played Pat's significant other, Chris, I want to
Yeah.
say.
Yes.
I didn't know the breadth of those and just all of the, do you go in this room or this room? It's like, how often can you stretch out this joke?
It's crazy to me because if you look at how long sketches last on SNL, Pat was a very, successful sketch. Like it lasted for 4 years. So that's pretty wild. And then it had like a film spinoff, which was the model back then, but like nonetheless, it obviously had to do extremely well to then be spun off into a movie. So yeah, it's amazing how far that joke went.
As we are talking, have you had your premiere yet?
So we premiered at Tribeca a year ago. And then we did the festival circuit for about a year, and then we're doing a theatrical run right now. So we just had a week-long run in New York at DCTV. We're going to be at Vidiots in Los Angeles on June 28th, which will be really like a big, wonderful screening. And we're also in like a bunch of different places. So if folks want to go on to our website, wearepat.com.
Fantastic. Ro, thank you so much for your time. This is such a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Mike.